Greetings, Darklings. From across the interweb, it's once again I, the Duchess, Precious Ken, here for the Sounds and Shadows podcast. And I'm really excited. We have lots of cool stuff to talk about. I'll start off like normal with an unboxing and a hello here. So first off, today's t-shirt is Dread Risks, which are a Texas hard doom industrial band that I really, really like. I recommend everybody check that out. And I received in the mail the other day a new CD of Spirit, but it features Kimberly of Bow Ever Down, who was just a part of, we released our new single for Amaranth, Got the Mist, and she was one of the featured guest vocalists. To me, one of the favorite backup vocals that got sent over, just a very powerful voice and super cool person. So please, everybody go check that out. Lately on Sounds and Shadows, in this last kind of series of interviews I've been doing, we've had some bands and artists, but I've been trying to mix in other aspects and people in the scene, whether it's DJs or promoters or just different kind of people that are involved in this dark scene of music. And so today I have a return guest that we've had before, but just one of my favorite people that is going to join us. And instead of as a capacity as a musician, which he is with his outstanding band Hueco, but as a Mexico City dark scene music historian with a brand new book that's just been released called Jumping Someone Else's Train, it is my extreme pleasure to introduce Jose Hernández Riwes Cruz. Oh, what's your day? Jose, my friend, welcome.
Thank you very much, Ken. Thank you very much, Katie. Thank you very much, all the stuff of Sounds and Shadows. It's
I mean,
again,
you're part of the fam too.
yeah. But I mean, it's a real pleasure being here, and really, thank you guys, thank all the community of Sounds and Shadows that has been growing and growing and growing, and making marvelous things, for the scene, and yeah, it's a pleasure for me to be here yet again.
It really is baffling. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, the way this has just continued to grow and expand and get bigger. And that's one of the other reasons I really love lately when we've had interviews like Kate Muir, who's a DJ and streamer and also does kind of historical pieces for bands, and you to really kind of, I don't know, talk about that other important aspect about it. So we have an interview from you before, and I'll make sure to link that in there so people can hear a bit about your band and some of the great things we talked about in the Mexican music scene. But I kind of want to jump right into it. So let me start out by just saying you have this new book out that you've just released, which I love the title and the, kind of bringing in with the cure. And tell me a little bit about what inspired you to want to write this book and share why it mattered to tell the world about kind of how this impact of dark music happened in the Mexico City scene.
Well, yeah. Of course, I'm re-releasing this book, which is called "Jumping Someone Else's Train Remix," because
I love that remixing a book. That's
yeah.
glorious.
But the idea is that this book had a first version, which is on the web, but it's just the first chapter, and the story around it is like very long and very boring. But the thing is that this book called attention of in the rock scene in Mexico, not the dark alternative music, but in the rock scene, the national Mexican rock scene, because yes, it's about something I mean, not something, but a scene which is our scene that has been developing, for almost, let's say, 40 years. I mean, in concrete, 30 years, but if we talk about the proto scene, it's 40 years. And we are talking, right? And we are talking about the Sounds and Shadows community that is part of the things that we have been doing as a Mexican dark scene, as well as getting in touch with all Latin American and Spain scene as well. What I am getting into is that it's, yes, an overlooked scene, but that it has a very rich history, and that right now it's one of the most proto-active scenes, getting in touch with you guys and with people from the rest of the world, and like the official and the non-official channels have like not like forget about it, but there was very few people that talk about this particular scene, as well as some other scenes, in the rock horizon. But as we have learned, in the community, if you don't do it, nobody is going to do it. So that was one of the first motives to write this book. But most important reason is that I am releasing, along with a good old friend, a writer that has been part of the dark Mexico City dark scene, Macarena Munoz. We are releasing, maybe this year, maybe the next year, we don't know, because that is in hands of the publisher right now, this huge book about the Mexico City history of dark scene. The first volume, because it is mammoth, it's huge. I mean, it's and this first volume starts in the 70s, like we're tracking all the things that led the Mexico City goth scene to happen. And yes, it starts in the 70s, and this book ends in 89, because the publisher told us, if we go
much further,
release the
we're writing a tome here.
yeah, it's going to be but this, the War and Peace like book. So let's cut it in half and release the first part.
Yeah.
But since it is a story of the 70s and up to 89, I felt that something was missing, like an introductory essay was missing.
Yeah.
And that was like the idea of this jumping someone else's train book, which it has a subtitle that is like a reflection on the so-called Mexican post-punk revival.
Mm-hmm.
And why so-called? Because many people here have been arguing, all this Byzantine, discussions that not only we have, but you have, everybody has, like, what is and what is not post-punk, if it is,
yes,
if the labels are, adequate or not. But it is let's say, it is the pretext to analyze and introduce the Mexico City goth scene, to a wider audience. And a curious thing is that you guys in Sounds and Shadows, Danny on the Cemetery Confessions, and
I love seeing that, by the way, the interview you did with I love everything that they do, and it was so great to see, whether it was that or you starting to do other interviews, once you had done ours. to just get out there and get to talk to a lot of other people too. It was a fascinating discussion you had with Danny. So
Yeah,
everyone
yeah,
should check that out too.
yeah. It was great, but the thing is that many people around the world is getting interested in what is happening,
Yeah.
outside of this. Let's call it trigger warning. It is not meant to offend anybody, but let's call it this uh, Western canon of rock on pop
Sure.
music, which is like,
I don't think that's offensive. That's a reality. That
yeah,
is a reality that has been happening for a while. And I think you're right. It's wonderful for me to see that this is starting to come down organically and just people are genuinely getting interested in the what are the things that I haven't heard because the media hasn't covered them for the past 30 freaking years or longer, you know?
yes, and it is not a book, that starts like, hey, you should listen to us because we no, no, no. It is like, well, we got we were influenced by this
Right.
canon, and we develop our scene this way in this specific geography in of the country, because of course we have learned, along the road in Mexico, that we tend to do this, like saying that Mexico City is where where everything happens, and it's not true.
Right.
Like there is this huge difference between scenes from Michigan, New York, California. The same happens here. So yes, that's why I am careful, and along with my friends, which we work on this, studying Mexico rock. Like, okay, I am doing this regarding Mexico City and this particular geography in Mexico City, not all Mexico
Right.
City, because this is the thing that I've been involved with, you know. So yes, this book is yes, a reflection on labels, on
Or
the
genres and the different
genres,
parts to it.
but on the media and industry, how do they label it, and how it has worked, with us in Mexico City, and how do we assemble our vision, from, and this is important, from the fragments that we got from from this canon,
Sure.
of course, we do not know about all the canon. We just receive the things that Mexican media
Yeah.
is interested in, and they
That's
release
what I
this.
yeah, that's what I find so fascinating too, though, is I mean, so one thing that I think is important to bring up is kind of when you talk about the different parts of Mexico and how that's going to flavor new music that's coming out, that was influenced by post-punk and goth and whatnot. But Mexico City on its own, I know I didn't until I got talking with you about this. People don't think about or understand how much bigger even Mexico City is than New York City. And people, and so when you think about a thing like New York, you can't even just say New York is one music scene. It
Right.
has very distinctive flavors even within that one city because it's so large, so many cultures involved. And Mexico City is a lot the same way in just the sheer scope of how many people live there, and the subtle differences that flavor it in between. And the other thing you brought up there that I find really fascinating is, let's remember that as somebody who's 44 years old, me, I didn't get to, I mean, I've seen The Cure on the Wish tour and much later on, but I was born in 1977. I didn't see The Cure starting out or the Smiths starting out or so on and so forth. I heard them later in my life. I was influenced by them, and they played an influence on music I made later. People in Mexico came from, as you said, the canon of the Western canon or the British movement on this. You were hearing the exact same stuff we were, and in the exact same time period. It comes to people at all different times that you find this music, you're touched by it, and then you want to go out and make something of your own, you know? And I think that's important to realize too, that you were impacted in the same way in your formative years, but because of the other parts of your culture and music culture, it's going to then be a new movement that has a different spice, a different flavor to it, but coming from those same essential ingredients.
Right. Yes. Yes. I mean, and there is another element that is very important, you know, in the development of in Mexico City's rock and of course dark scene. You know that as I told you in the last episode or in
Yeah,
Danny's episode, the thing that rock was some sort of forbidden, you know.
yeah,
It gave us different. It's like different Mexico cities, you know. We I grew up. You know, I was a teenager in the '80s, and I grew up in a Mexico in a city where, you know, we read about all these marvelous concerts. Not that went, you know, in Woodstock or Altamont or whatever. No, but the things that were happening, you know, Live Aid, all the Amnesty International concerts in Latin America, you know,
yeah.
but they didn't arrive in. They didn't touch Mexico or neither Mexico City. So. Um, One of my cousins, the jazz player, he went to make this his specialty on drums in in Paris, France, you know. And when we were talking on the phone because you have to go to the payphone, you know, and try to break it in order that you could make this long distance call without,
Oh,
you
wow.
know,
Yeah. I didn't,
yeah, without you know, putting in danger the mortgage of my parents' house or whatever, you
sure,
know.
the
It's
person
like,
you were calling. Yeah.
and I remember that back then in the '80s, he told me, well, we went to see Frank Zappa, you know, but the funny thing is that we bought the tickets by phone, and we were like, oh, how's that possible, you know? My father, of course, I mean, the world was elsewhere, you
Right.
know. And then in the '90s, of course, I mean, we got, you know, Ticketmaster. I mean,
Sure.
rock was here. I mean, many great tours arrived or touched not only
It's
the
funny to
country
me
but
hearing
Mexico City.
somebody be excited that Ticketmaster arrived, because usually to me that spelled the beginning of the end for a lot.
Yeah, yeah. No, yes, it is. But you know, it was here for us. It was like we can buy now we can buy the tickets by phone, or we can go to this safe place where we you know that you are going to get your
Get the
tickets.
ticket, right?
Yeah.
Not, be
So
forgeries or anything like that. Yeah.
right, and right now it's something that you know, not a teenage person, but an infant knows that they are going to they can watch whoever they want when they arrive, you know, when the tour arrives in Mexico City, you know. And it's like, yeah, maybe I'll go, maybe I don't go, you know. And for us it was, I mean, very different. I mean, so we have this different Mexico's, you know. And yes, of course, the development of the scene was different back then. I mean, as I just told you, we still now we get fragments of what is happening, you know,
Yeah.
like, oh, because Molcha Doma is popular in Mexico, we think that they are popular
Around the world.
around the world.
And to a point, that's true, but you're right. I think especially when I hear you talk about, there's a concept, I don't know if it's something in Mexico that gets talked about, but called FOMO, or
Hmm.
fear of missing out.
Hmm.
And that's kind of a big buzzword or happening right now. But with, the student riots and the fact that rock music was shut, I mean, footloose style, illegal, shut down
Hmm.
there for
Hmm.
so
Hmm.
long. The concept to me of fear of missing out is a whole different thing because in your lifetime, you have been denied access to the music you love, you know,
Yeah.
and that is something that I think in the States or what have you, that you might have a slight feeling of that, but you haven't looked down the eye of just how terrifying that is to not have a chance, like you said, to go buy tickets to see every band on tour.
Right, right, and yes, and now this thing that this book, it's trying to conceal or just to put in evidence that there are all these different perspectives of musicians, um, working in the present,
Yeah.
because the new generation of yes, the youngest generation of the dark scene here in Mexico, uh, the majority, or let's say the most popular, let's say, community is the post-punk,
Yeah.
and they they rescued all these bands from the 80s, from the beginnings of the 80s, that were like really overlooked, and
Yeah.
because of the background I told you about. I mean, it was really hard to to become this, well, outside of your group of friends and from this particular geography in Mexico City. It was very hard to play, or to organize a party or whatever. It was to be in this specific area with this specific group of people. And back then, as we are talking about right now, these fragments, they called themselves. If you watch these interviews when they were young, and there is this interviewer going, okay, so you're going to be, we hope that you will become the most popular rock band in Mexico. And they go, whoa, 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 we are not rock, we are technopop. That's like,
which
okay.
which I love hearing that. That's awesome because a lot of times in our genre it's the opposite. The people at the top of the game are like, don't call us goth. No, we're a rock band. And
Yeah,
it's funny to see the other way. No, we are technopop. That's what we are, and we embrace that genre.
right. And right now, the young people, they call them post-punk. So
Mm-hmm.
when you go with the elder, when you go with the elder, and ask them, what do you think about the this young scene calling you post-punk? They say, we never went by that name.
Sure.
We are just realizing right now that we are post-punk.
Yeah.
But back then, we called ourselves technopop or new wave or whatever, but not rock, not post-punk. We were this other thing. But, and this is a quote that I used to close the book. It's like, of course, the a caveman, he didn't know that he was going to be called a caveman, right?
Right.
So
Did you think my life was just about caves? Yeah, sure. I
yeah,
slept there, but I went out and did things all
so
day
yeah,
long. Like, I'm not just about a cave, okay?
right. So yeah, I mean, it's like, but we call them that way. So
Sure.
it's out of our hands. And yes, I mean, that is that part in the book, but also it's the part of, yes, reviewing where does this mediatic craze came from, which is from a bad reading of Simon Reynolds' Break It Up and Rip It Up
Rip it up and start again. Yeah.
and Start Again, Post Punk, which in Spanish they turned the title.
Yeah.
They name it Post Punk, Rómpelo Todo y Vuelve a Empezar. So yeah, the title is Post Punk and the Rip It Up is here, whereas in America or in England, it's rip it up again, post punk, blah blah
Yeah.
blah blah blah, right?
And that was an important book for me too. I mean,
Yeah,
and again, I think it goes back to what we're saying, that a lot of these particular cultural ideas that came out of that first post-punk found us both. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
a country away, or a decade away, maybe in terms of when we were reading it, but it had that same impact despite those time and distance changes. I mean, God, I must have read that 5 or 6 times over and over again in kind of my most influential period, you know?
yeah, yeah. And then what we said here is like, okay, so one of the troubles here in Mexico is that we are monolingual. Few people, really few people, talk two languages, or can read two languages. So, and they have read this book, but they have read the translation of this book, and they
Mm-hmm.
only have read what other people read and what other people wrote about this book,
Yeah.
and not the book per se, but like the rumor around it, like the yes, and oh, he says this about post punk, and you go and read the book, and no, he didn't. But
Sure.
it has grown this way. So yes, like many other things, like yeah, right now the post punk genre, or just the label, has grown colossally. It's
Yeah.
now part of the mainstream. Uh, the last time in Mexico, at least, that when something from the dark um, dark scene reached this level
Mm-hmm.
was with the Cure, maybe in the Wish, when the Wish tour was around, Disintegration, Wish, and that's that. you
So
know
you bring that up, and I think that's really important. Especially, I use this as the title of it, "Jumping Someone Else's Train," which is a Cure song, and in particular for the Cure, or Depeche Mode, or some of these other bands. What was the impact for you on the Mexican scene when this first arrived and first hit? That is, as you said, bands today in that scene are coming back to this and finding it and being influenced by it. Obviously, it had a huge impact on the culture there, that went on to people making their own music that kind of had this flavor or style to it, even though it was from somewhere else. It was from England, or Los Angeles, or what was it like in that early scene there in Mexico when these bands started uh, coming in, whether it was through the radio or bootleg CDs, or what was that like in terms of a culture change for you and your friends and the people around you being hit by this music for the first time?
well, it was um, when there is this saying that when you are in the top of the mountain, you don't see the mountain. And you might think that everything is the mountain, but when you are away from the mountain, it's not. It's just a little part of the
Yeah.
world, right? So yes, I grew up in this specific uh, geographical, cultural part of Mexico City, where the bands that are now known as the most important bands in Mexican rock were developed. They were my friends, or they were the friends of my older cousins or brothers. So
Yeah.
we were together, and but it was, you know, just part of this specific area and specific people who, listen to the newest things Britain or America was like releasing, uh, we tend to think that it was something huge, but it wasn't. You know, it was something very because mainstream. Which were like the mainstream bands? U2, um, and
Joy Division, New
no,
Order.
no, 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 none of them. Here in Mexico in the 80s, OMD was bigger than New Order, you know?
Yeah, that makes sense. You know,
And yes, we knew about them, and we now we had these channels that they showed video clips of The Cure, of the Pitch Mode, and it was something that was happening. Yes, you know, of course, the geometrical haircuts were in fashion. You know,
right?
dressing in black was I mean a part of the fashion, but you know it was not like oh you are protogoth or something because if you remember the Joshua tree, U2 is dressed in black, so it
Right.
was black was like the thing that you have to wear. And many people were wearing black and they were using mascara, but they weren't goth. They were playing something else, you know?
Sure.
But it was,
And I think that's always been true too. I mean, part of what appealed to a lot of people here in America, I think for sure, in the goth scene was they would come into the music about it, but a lot of kind of what you said, whether it was the David Bowie or the glam influence or it, but the idea of they had these feelings of breaking down gender barriers in fashion and things like that. And it's just that bands like that, The Cure and
yeah,
so on and so forth, made that feel more safe, more welcoming.
right.
And then they found their way into the music, but it was kind of that expression was a big part of what they needed a club or a safe place to
Right.
feel like because that was something they felt internally.
Yeah. When did you know that a band became mainstream? When they released an album, a Mexican version of the album, you know?
Sure, yeah. I mean
Because,
that you're right because that takes money. I mean that's
right.
huge.
Yes, yes. I mean, okay, we are going to release this album by this new band because we know that it is selling, you know, a
Right.
lot. So, yeah, I mean, you two, they had their Mexican versions, you know, from their albums,
Yeah.
but it was up until Disintegration came along that The Cure got their Mexican
And that's when they
release.
had made it.
You know, yes, there is the Kiss Me Mexican version, you know, and
Oh, that.
Staring at the Sea.
Yeah.
But I should look up when the Staring at the Sea became, you know, like they had their Mexican version. I think it was after Disintegration. You
Okay.
know, that the edition was after Disintegration. Yes, we've got Kiss Me. They were like something huge, something that was coming because many bands were like dressing like that, you know, but there weren't like like oh these guys are like the I mean Caifanes are like the Cure version, Mexican Cure version. Yeah, I remember,
So
I
who
was
was that? I'm very curious for you to tell, like, was there somebody that you thought of as kind of the Mexican version of The Cure that was out in those early days that
yeah, it was
emulated it?
Caifanes was I mean
Okay,
but
yeah.
this was like the mainstream vision,
Yeah.
because I remember like just I mean we were in this girl's apartment. She was like recruiting teenagers to go to this all the bars, the rock bars, just to ask if people like this or that band. And she was working for Caifanes, and I was just like like ha ha ha, I'm going to make my little mischief here. And I remember asking her, but they told me that they copied the look from The Cure. This was before they released their first album.
Right.
I mean, but it was like 2 months before. I mean, we knew that the album was coming. And I remember she was all, offended, and she said, "Well, they have like the palm tree hairdo." And I was like, "Oh yeah, sure, that's a very original of them." But then again, I mean, right now, you know, Jesus and Mary Chain, Echo and the Bunnymen, Clan of Cymogs. I mean, Nina Hagen, they had this
Yeah.
the same the same hairdo, and it's like, well, everybody was wearing that. I mean, not just Robert Smith, not just only The Cure, but The Cure was like the most popular band of this. So everybody here says, oh, okay, Caifanes is like The Cure Mexican version, and I was like,
Yeah, I think a lot of it too is, I mean, you talk about like an iconic hairstyle like that or something like, but think of how many places around the ancient world had, whether it was a pyramid or a ziggurat or you know, things develop in
mhm,
different places. I mean, just because you happen to think it looks aesthetically cool to have big hair or something,
mhm.
I mean, it isn't, magical that one person had to come up with that. Different people that have no contact with each other come up with ideas on their own because they're cool.
Yeah.
Wearing all black is cool,
Mhm.
and it's cool whether you grew up in Turkey, Africa, or New York. You know what I mean? Some of those cultural things just happen because, well, they make sense.
Yes. And there is this quote from Zuzi in the book, in the Jumping Someone Else's Train,
Mhm.
where she says, well, Robert became, when he was playing with us, he became like Severin's little brother because he was copying all Severin look, when he was with us.
Sure.
And then he copied things from my look as well,
Yeah.
you know? And it's not like this is not in the aim of who was first, but it was like it's a process, it's something that
Exactly.
occurred, that happened, and there you get. But yes, uh, the Cure released Disintegration, and it became here in Mexico something like they released.
Did
Uh,
it feel like it was kind of overnight when Disintegration came out, the Mexican version, did it really blow up quickly after that and seem to kind of like overtake, as you said, not just one small circle, important to the scene, but start to really on a pop level go
yeah,
everywhere?
yes, yes, it went everywhere. But the other thing that came was this song by Caifanes, La Negra Tomasa, which is not a new wave post-punk whatever song. It's a cumbia. It's this genre that was played by some other type of band, some other type of music, much more Afro-Antillean thing that grew up strong in Mexico. That we and but back then, and this was back then again. It was talking as a person from the late 80s.
Yeah.
We said this is music for of the people who comes and sweat my floor and makes this is music for from
Blue collar sort of.
yeah,
Yeah.
blue collar music, and these guys are playing it.
Yeah.
And yes, many people got angry because of that, but the thing is that releasing this song make these guys uh, take a crossover not only to the pop, to the garbage pop world,
Hmm.
but to this blue collar world, where the real massive, not mainstream, but massive audience is.
Yeah.
So everybody in Mexico got to know Caifanes because of the song.
I mean, that's awesome though. I mean, I think that's really fascinating. So the other thing I want to hit on here, because we're, man, as always, Jose, you talking and we're talking, but tell a little bit about where people can find this book, where it is available, because I feel like this is so important to kind of look at that story, as you said, from Savage, that we read and saw all those years ago, and put that through the lens of how it impacted and affected another culture.
Yeah, this is going to be. So, I mean, there is this record label, record store here in this indie record label, record store, which is called Venas Rotas, Broken Veins,
Oh, cool. I
and
love
they work with many bands. They really want to get to know you guys, as a matter of fact, because yes, they have this little bar here that it's called We Are Nothing, No Somos Nada, and it's
I
this,
like that too, man.
yeah.
I want to get to know them.
Yeah, I mean, and they were the ones who came and up to approach me, and they told me, well, why don't we release a physical edition of this book,
Yeah,
but you have to put in much more, material, so
sure,
it's not
sure.
this thing, so it has two chapters: the Jumping Someone Else's Train, which was this uh, electronic book that is around the web. If you want
Mhm.
to read it, I'm going to leave you the address because it's free. But this is like the re-edition, and which comes much more complete and much more, has a lot of that. The things we're talking about, all this part are not in this first chapter. It comes in the second chapter, which is called Another Journey by Train, which is also another Cure song,
Yep,
and it's like a remix, not remix, of the first song.
yep.
That's why it's called Jumping Someone Else's Train remix,
I love that.
remix, because we get deeper into this. And remember that when back then, when you released this single version of your song, this remix,
Mhm.
if you hear Fascination Street, the album mix and the single mix Fascination Street is longer, right?
Right,
So
right. That was always the, yeah.
this is the idea. So they are going to release it next month. It's going to be available. I'm going to give you all the addresses, but it's venasrotasdiscos.net, and they have their email address, discosvenasrotas@gmail.com. I'm going to give you the
Yeah,
address.
I'll make sure that all of
Yeah.
those are available in the links so that people can find these. And like I said, get a copy of this so that you have that history and that understanding in the same way. I mean, in particular, if you're any kind of a scholar of the scene, as many claim to be often, you know about the early history and whatnot. Having this book and seeing it through a different lens, I think, is an important part of having a broad perspective.
Yes, and as I told you, it's like the teaser of what's coming, of the next book, which is huge, the first volume of the book we are releasing, which is called Let's Pretend We Are in London.
Okay.
So because that's why, well, when these people that I've told you from this sort of schools or this sort of scene got together, this small scene got together,
Yeah.
they usually, when they organize parties, home parties, not these huge parties, but
Sure, the house party. I
they
know the
used,
house party scene
yes, they
where the
used to.
amp doesn't work and the PA blows out everybody's ears. Oh, I know it.
That was the theme, you know. Let's pretend we're in London because that's the music that we like. That's the music that we
Right.
hear. That's the way we like to dress.
Sure.
But the funny thing is that it's a London that just exists in our minds.
Right. And I'll tell you the truth. Exactly what you describe growing up in America was the same way for me. We would get together and have these listening parties and have bands play, or we would play, but we were also obsessed with British post-punk culture because of this. I mean, again, we didn't call it that at the time, but that was just as much for us here in America. The impact of that. All the bands we listened to were British. We would walk around using different British slang and talking to each other.
Yeah.
It was very much a part of our culture in the 90s as well, kind of hearing this and refinding it too.
Yeah, and something that has been very, you know, very, let's say, that has brought a very, very rich part is now that we are in this community, uh, in the um, in the book, in the Jumping Someone Else's Train book, I included a quote by one of the members of the community of the Sounds and Shadows community.
Oh,
Yeah, Megan Wood McGeehan,
yeah.
that she wrote this piece about post-punk. What is it?
Yeah,
It
she
isn't
does
post-punk.
a blog, and in particular, I think it has a really profound understanding of the band Christian Death that we just
Yeah.
interviewed. He is kind of, I would consider, a Christian Death historian.
Yes. 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 But also, in the other book, in the Let's Pretend We're in London, in Spanish it's called Vamos a jugar a Londres, but it's, in English it's Let's Pretend We're in London. There is this huge chunk of dialogue because it is written in oral tradition. You know that where everybody's like that. If you remember, I asked your permission, and I asked. I make the question in the Sounds and Shadows community.
Mhm.
How how was the scene called back in
I
the
remember that. Yeah,
and yes, I mean Marvel's people, they gave all this, description of what
and very little agreement.
yes, yes,
It
yes,
was
yes,
different for everybody.
yes. I mean, it was. I got amazed because of this. This is something that I've told you, and in the last interview, and that I put this on the book that I was with my cousins in the Great America, San Francisco, and
Mhm.
my cousins, we were just waiting for this, getting into this attraction that was called the Edge, and and then she showed me and she told me, look, those are moths, and I saw this all these goth guys, dressed like, but I didn't got
The reference or
the
the
not the reference but the word,
yeah,
I heard she said moths, but I said no, those are not, because in my mind moths were like, quadrophenia.
quadrophenia, skinny
Oh, yeah.
ties, the
So I was like,
suits,
what?
the Vespas. Yeah, like that's what I think of for mods.
Time went along and I changed the word to moths, like this.
Oh, like mod goths.
Yeah,
I like
yeah. And then it was, no, surely she said goth or something like that. And then when I was in the, here in the, again in the Sounds and Shadows, I wrote this, and uh, many people told me like, yeah, they are called, yes, we call ourselves moths. And then I was like, whoa, so the word was correct. It was moth. So I was like, my world just was blown apart. And
Now, when you first said moths, I thought you were going to be referring to what we call later kind of a resurgence here in America when Hot Topic became, and were called mall goths. And so I think sometimes they were called moths too, because it was the combination of kind of you would go and hang out at Hot Topic in the mall.
yeah, the one that told me that, she began to write about that they were called moths, and
Yeah.
that was where I got the idea of asking all the community was Jennifer Wild, you
Yep.
know, and we had this nice. I mean, I just have to thank everybody who, who make this happen, because uh, it was like this opening of this of worlds, of doors to some other kind of perspective, because yes, as everybody in the rest of the world, we here in Mexico City, we have had our discussions on whether we were dark or we were goths or we were post-punk. So that's why we call ourselves
Yeah.
oscuros, and that's
Whether
it.
you're talking about, yeah, regional or
Yeah,
generational. No, I love that. And I think that's a big, I don't know. A part of why I love our community in Sounds and Shadows, our thing is just that is it not only comes from all over the world, a lot of different genres, but also different decades, different,
Right.
times you get. And when everybody kind of is able to call out their culture or history or perspective on this together, and then everybody reads it in good faith, everyone gets a richer, broader idea of the strength of the scene and what it can mean.
Right. And you know that's the best part of realizing all this for me was like, yes, we have built world around this concept, our own world, our own dark Mexican dark music scene, as well as you guys in Kalamazoo, as well as somebody in Chester in England, that it's very particular and it has its own specific,
Idiosyncrasies.
yeah, right. But we share, and the thing is that we always tend to say, oh yes, if we were living in America or in England, things will be no, they won't be. They will be the same.
It's
The
it's
same things that happens here happens there. Like,
Yeah. The
and
core ideas are the same. We just make up a lot of different little words and argue about them to describe the same core concepts, I think. I think
right,
that's definitely true.
right.
Okay,
So,
so I do now,
mhm.
and I'm going to have all the links there. And again, I really can't stress enough. Everybody needs to be excited about this book and find it. And I look forward to getting a chance to meet some new friends of yours from this bookstore and talk with them. We'll have to have them on for an interview about some of the things that they're doing, which sound really, really exciting to me. I do want, to talk a little bit about music because
Okay,
you are such a resource for me. I've been really excited in diving in and trying to get more coverage of some of the Mexican Latin dark scene bands that are coming out. And every time I talk to you, I find five new ones that I fall in love with. So I want to get a chance right now for you to tell me about some of the bands that you're excited about right now so that our listeners can go and add this to their Bandcamp wish list and find some of these bands and explore them. So if
okay,
you would be so kind, hit me with new things I need to be hearing.
okay. So, one of the most uh, successful bands, well, they are working really, really hard. They are more like IBM-ish music.
Did you say
Um,
IDM
EDM, sorry,
or EDM?
EDM.
Well, because I thought it could have been something new, and I was like, oh
No, no,
wow,
no, no, no.
new genre.
EDM music. They are called La Bande Son Imaginaire in French.
Okay.
That is in roughly Spanish or English. It's the imaginary soundtrack,
Ooh, okay.
right? And they are these guys who have all this, I mean, again, theatrical stuff, but they are mixing all this Mexican, not pre-Hispanic, but more Mexican from small townish idea of
Yeah.
ghosts. They dress like that and they sing like that, and they have
Story type
this
stuff.
very very good show, performatic show on
Yeah.
stage, and they have been on tour, this all this year that the moment they could do it, they did it. They went
Yeah.
like,
When they were loud, they took
yeah,
off.
and they are growing and they are growing well,
Yeah.
and
Sounds really cool.
they are about to release their new song, and they were recording their video today. It's called Mexican Wave. But you can listen to them on Bandcamp, the La Banzone Imaginaire. I'm going to send you the link
Yes, yes, and I'll make
of
sure to
this.
share that too.
And uh, they co-worked with this in a previous song with the I can't remember the name of the one of the guitar players from Ministry.
Oh, okay.
Um, so yeah, and they are doing it well. You know that they are building things from the ground, you know, and growing and growing and growing, and it's a band that you need to listen to
Yeah.
and watch because they are amazing. They are and they are two brothers, the Tanat brothers. That's their last name.
Hmm.
Oscar Tanat is the lead singer, and the guy
Yes.
who has all the concept of this. And
I,
yes,
I think I'm Facebook friends with Oscar, so
yes,
I'll definitely have to, yeah, look, yeah.
yeah, and one of his I love this video that is called Ego Goth instead of instead of go go music,
Right.
go goth. It's called like
Oh,
you know,
gosh.
and
Okay.
yes, they have this wonderful video. I mean, it was a song released during the pandemic, and but they are working. They are hard workers, and they are going places. You know, they
Yeah.
are doing it. Um,
Very cool.
yeah.
All right. Who else do we got?
We have this other guy that it's he's into the post-punk genre, yes, but it's more
More guitar
rocker,
based,
more
more
guitar
rock
based,
based than the
yes. And the band is called Mementut,
Mementut.
yes.
Okay.
And
What does that mean?
I don't have the slightest idea.
Okay, so it isn't okay. Good. Good.
Yeah, but
I want
I
to make
think
sure I
I
wasn't
read
missing.
it's something that has to do with some mind disease or something. I was reading this the other day,
Okay.
and yes, they these are bands that I mean, Lavanson is releasing a new song. Memento, they are like playing and playing and playing and playing and playing and doing um, doing this all these gigs, and again, you know, they are building their their audience, a very strong audience, you know, that that is you know, something that very few people is getting to solidify right now, you know, because it's been hard for everybody, but he has done it, and you have to listen to him, and he has this great again this he gets audiences to make slam yet again. Thank God. It's like, you know, it's like something that I was missing, you know, and
Yeah.
because yes, many people goes like this in on the concerts, but this guy is making people, you know, going again on the, you know, the mosh pit, and yes,
See,
he's a
now that is something I feel like I miss a lot and need brought back is just
yeah.
people who with their stage show and music can get engagement, get people to feel like they are a part of what's happening on stage out in the pit in front.
Yes, yes, they are like you know, they are very brilliant, you know, and the music is very good. I mean, more guitar based, but they are very strong, you know, like, and they have a strong presence on stage. And talking about you know, elder bands that are releasing new material, there is El Clan, which had
Yes,
just
one of
released
my
their
favorites. One of
yes.
my that I follow closely and that I got into through you and now can't get enough of. So yes, they have a new release coming out. And I think that's a thing too, for whether we're talking about
Hmm.
British bands, American bands, you know, no matter where you're at in the world, there is a part of bands that have been around for 3 decades that have 12, 15 albums under their belt, finding this resurgence in the scene and using that as a door to open themselves up to new younger fans that then get to see their rich history. And I think Elk
Hmm.
Clan is a great example of that.
Yes, they've released this album. It's called Somos nuestro peor miedo. We are our worst fear,
Mm-hmm.
and they are doing new music again, and they are going to try, to record in English, So now that there is this part when in rock history, Mexican rock history, when we thought that we have to sing in English just to get, to make the crossover, but it didn't happen. I mean, because it's not just singing in English. I mean, it's not just, not just putting. I always do this comparison with food. Like um, if you want to sell a taco, and the people from America to buy you a taco, don't do the original Mexican taco because very few people are going to buy it. You have to do Taco Bell, you know. So there are some other elements that are working, in the mixture. So
I'm very happy to see that both in music, the analogy you just used, but also in tacos, that finally America is starting to evolve up to a level where they can embrace both music in Spanish and actual tacos that aren't complete trash.
yes,
So that it's good to see that we're coming around on both those concepts.
yes. I mean, it's like, well, um, it's hard. I mean, we know that it's hard for American audiences or British audiences to listen to music in other languages, you know.
Have to be. They just need to get over it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only mainstream band that has accomplished that is Rammstein, I think, right?
Sure. I think there's some, I think German a lot, more have. I think that's, look, let's face it. I mean, that's part of it. There are bands in Germany singing in German that are extremely unpopular industrial bands in
Hmm.
America. That isn't what the problem is. That's not where the cultural things holding back Americans from embracing things are. And I think that's a perfect example of it. I think it's changing and getting better, but I think it's something that we have a long way to go about. And it has a lot more to do with what people see than what they're hearing. And that's a sick reality that we need to work past.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, well, I mean, but it happens everywhere, you know. I mean, the analogy of the tacos works both ways. It's like we Mexicans, why are we going to eat at Taco Bell since we have tacos?
Right.
So,
But then again, probably maybe the first hamburger that you had was McDonald's, which is trash too, or I'm
yeah,
not, you see what I'm saying? Like yeah,
yeah,
it can go both ways, but you're right. Like the idea that Taco Bell is referred to as Mexican food is an injustice to Mexican food.
yeah, yeah. But the reality is that that idea of taco is international. If you go
Sure,
to
sure.
France, you can go to Russia and then ask for a taco, and they're going to give you a taco, something like a
Taco
taco, but
Bell.
not a,
Yeah.
not an
You're going to
original
make me
taco.
cry now if we keep talking about
Well,
that are available around the world.
but anyway, the thing is that the yes, I mean, this is something that we have to work, into. But the language thing here in Mexico back then in this other Mexico from the 80s,
Yeah.
many bands did it, and that's why this huge mediatical campaign and came along, like Rock in Your Language has this huge impact because it was the first time mainstream was filled with rock and pop bands singing in Spanish, and it was huge. But now, with all this, you know, when you say, well, I'm going to sing in English because I have the means to get to other people in other countries if I sing in English, it's much more viable that back in the 80s, no? I mean, that's why Hoffen got their contract with Clio, because they sang in English, they didn't sing in Spanish.
And I think it goes back to something you said earlier, like when The Cure or our other band that was hitting the big time is having the ability to reach other audiences by talking to them in their own language. That is important in a way if you're trying to really branch in. And so maybe that is the case when you have a band like El Clan that can have more mainstream appeal in the American audience and be ready to say it isn't that we aren't still doing albums in Spanish and for our culture. It's that on top of that, we're now branching out to new audiences. And because we have the ability to do that, because we've reached that level. And so there, I think there's something to be said for that.
Yes, 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 yes. I mean, by all means. And the other recommendation I have to do is they are re-releasing again the album, an album that of the band of this lead vocalist from one of the most now one of the most successful, well, called successful bands from this early 80s time, which was Size. The lead singer, when he came back, he made this band, which is called, he was called Illy Bleeding, and he made this record with the band that was called the Robotes Trucosos, which is a bad translation from the Tricky Robots. They were trying to use Tricky Robots in Spanish,
Okay.
but since uh, the bass player, he's from Latvia, his Spanish wasn't that good back then, and he said robotes trucosos instead of saying los robots tramposos. I mean, something like that.
Yeah.
But he recorded this album back then, which had 4 songs from Zeiss. They covered them and they released them,
Mhm.
and 4 new songs. And this is important because this band was the one who opened the door for this post-punk Mexican scene. They were like
Yeah.
the ones that opened the door for this, and everybody, Hoffen, Redula Lume, Mementud, all of them, they came behind all this, like
Nice.
thanks to
Okay.
this.
Yeah.
The tragic part is that Illy, the lead singer, he died 1 week, or no, 1 week. It was like yes, 2 weeks before he released the album in a tragic accident. And but now the album it's been released in CD and in vinyl again, so
Oh,
it's a good opportunity for people to listen to this album,
yeah.
uh, and recover
An
this
album that
band.
was so
Yeah.
influential to
Yes.
everything in the Mexican scene that happened after it.
Yeah.
Kind of like we were talking about for us, whether you're talking about Early Cure or
Hmm.
Unknown Pleasures, Joy Division, or a lot of these albums in their time, Joy Division was playing for, 80 people or something in a club or 20 people in a club. And don't realize they never really got to the chance to have that. But what came after was an enormous, if you talk to pretty much any American band that has anything to do with the goth or dark scene, they're going to call that out as when, and heck, not even goth or whatever, I'm sure Blink 182 and stuff calls
Yeah.
Unknown Pleasure as one of their early influences. It
Right.
impacted everybody. So this is a chance to have that album that you're saying really touched on so many of the big Mexican dark scene bands after it. This was their
Yes.
influential album.
Yes. And as like in the 24-hour Party People movie
Hmm.
happened, the same thing happened with this band. There was this gig with Illy Bleeding and the Robotes Trucosos in this billiard of all places.
Okay, yeah,
you
like a
know,
pool hall. Yep.
yes, they shared this gig with a band called the Dragulas. Well, they're kind of known,
Yeah.
but the thing is that yes, there were like 30 people there,
So you're talking
But
about the Sex Pistols show in the
yes,
Tiny
yes,
Desk
yes.
movie.
But the people who
The
were
people
there
who were there at that night went on.
are the post-punk members
Yeah.
from many, many bands right now.
Wow.
So it was like kind of funny because, like, well, it didn't happen back then, but it happened 30 years later, so we still got it. Yeah, so yeah, 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 yeah.
Well, I will definitely go pick that up. And I think because you mentioned it, now I got to hunt it down on LP and I'm going to have one sent to me. So I'm going to go
Yeah.
find that because I really want to hear it on vinyl now so that I get the feeling that you had putting on a record back in the day
Yeah.
of this band.
Yes. It's going to be the vinyl is being released on February in 23, I
Oh,
guess.
okay.
But yeah, it is coming. Yeah, so
Beautiful, beautiful. All right. We are about at time here. But it was funny when we were doing the pre-show and just kind of catching up and talking. I noticed on Facebook that you were reading one of my favorite books of all time. You've been doing after, finishing your own book, I believe, and I hear this is a bit of a palate cleanser getting into reading some fiction stuff too and some fun stuff. And you talked about Philip Pullman. I think I
right.
saw like Frank Herbert Dune on there that,
Yeah.
a little while. But Philip Pullman in particular, and you were starting to tell me a great story of how you found this book. Because to me, this was a huge one for me. And then I'm going to tell you a story about Philip Pullman. But first, I want to hear how you found this book and decided this is something you wanted to read for fun.
Okay. Well, it was back in 2004, I guess. Yes, I was, in one of these
Mm-hmm.
trips that I could do to Europe, to England.
Mm-hmm.
It was the last leg of the trip. Like I was tired. I was like in Oxford, like laying on the grass. Like I don't want to move anymore. I mean, I've been walking.
Yes.
And I have spent all my money. And I was just walking back to the hotel, and I just looked to the Waterstone's library, and I was like, don't go in, because you're going to spend money that you don't have. So, but I went in. So I was just looking around, and then I went to the young reader section, and um I can't remember which part of Harry Potter was being released back then. So, but it was like, okay,
Something, yeah.
this or what? And then I noticed these little kids running, getting to this table where there was like 20 or something-ish books.
Yeah.
And they got one, and they just look around to their parents,
Mhm.
like, and they went along, and I was like waiting for some other kid to come along and
Yeah.
pick up the book, because I didn't want to lose my cool. Like
Over a
I,
kid's book,
so
like,
yeah,
hey, what's
yeah,
going on? This seems like the more punk rock option.
yeah, right. So, but then no, nobody came. So I was okay. So I'm tired. I want to go, but I want to know what it was, because I
Yeah.
saw like three kids coming along and running with something. I approached to the table, and there were like, yes, 20 books by Philip Pullman.
Hmm.
And I was like, which one is it?
Which one did the kid get
No,
right?
so yes, I asked to this nice lady who was attending, and I said, oh, what are the little kids reading? It's like,
What is this?
oh yeah, well, it's like the new release of this trilogy that came,
Yeah.
a while ago. It was called His Dark Materials,
Hmm.
and it's the new book. It's called Lyra's Oxford. It was the red one.
Yep.
And I was like, wow. And is it any good? And of course, the look of the lady was like, you little
You sweet
wonder.
summer child.
Yeah.
Like,
Okay. So yeah, she explained me what His Dark Materials was, and they had this sort of promotion that you got three books and two books, and the third one is free. So I didn't want to buy the
Yeah, the
huge
box
chunk.
set.
But no, I took the box set, not the one volume. I got the three because, and I was like, oh, but I don't. Anyway, so I got the four books, and as I was reading them, I was like, whoa, this guy it blew my mind, Back then I was teaching at high school,
Hmm.
and English. It
Yeah.
was not English, it was like pop culture. But so I arrived with my students and I said, we are going to read this book because I just find out about this,
That's awesome.
and you are going to read it, and there is this. I mean, I'm still very good friends with some of my ex-students,
Yeah,
and there was
those have
this.
to be like the coolest students if
Yeah,
they read Philip Pullman instead of
you
Harry
know,
Potter.
there was this huge guy, this huge,
Yeah.
tremendous guy with his little voice like this, and he moved like this. And we went. I played like the cool teacher, angry teacher, And when we went out, we were walking to the to another classroom, and he just was with me, and he said, "Remember that I last year I told you about the dark matter?"
Hmm.
And I just looked at him and I said, "Did you? I can't remember. And what did I told you? What did I say? What did I say?" "Yes, I asked you, have you heard about the dark matter? And and you ask me, have you heard about the gray matter?" And I was like, "Yes, it sounds like me. Sorry, I am really sorry that you brought me this last year, and I thought I was bringing it to you
Yeah,
guys." And
that's
so
funny.
yes, I made an apologize in front of the complete group, and I said, "Well, this guy is like." And then I became a huge fan of it, a
Yeah.
very, very huge fan. And I, of course, became disappointed by the film.
Yeah,
And
the film they definitely, especially the early one, Disneyified, but the new HBO show
yes,
is very, very good.
yes, it's
Um,
great.
so I'll
Something.
tell you my
Okay.
Philip Pullman story is how that book originally started. So Philip Pullman is a very good author and has had several, but he was close friends with C.S. Lewis.
Hmm.
Or they were, they would write to each other as writers do and would correspond and write letters. And when C.S. Lewis did The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, which in essence is kind of Christian propaganda,
Hmm.
but in the guise of pagan stories, or talking animals and all this stuff. And Philip Pullman, who is an atheist, reached out to him and said, "This is bullshit, man. Like, you are indoctrinating kids, but worse than that, using pagan stories to like teach your religious propaganda. How would you feel if I went and made a book about a bunch of cute talking animals to teach kids about atheism? You would think that was really messed up." And apparently C.S. Lewis kind of went, "Well, whatever, man, you just don't get it." And so he said, "Fine, fine, I'm going to do it." And that's really what the trilogy is about, is him kind of taking a shot at C.S. Lewis. But the book is brilliant and
Yes.
also just one of the best young adult fantasy novels of all time. It's just really well
Right.
done, and in my opinion, a hell of a lot better than The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Yeah, in my opinion too. I mean, is the rewriting on the Paradise Lost, of course.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I was like, I mean, when I realized that, and then I look on the internet, on the ancient internet back then, like, you know, I was like, whoa, whoa, this is impressive. Yeah, and having all these quotes in the last book, and the going under, I was like, my mind was blown apart. My wife, she just learned about it like when we were here in the pandemic, and he read it and he was like, "Wow, this is great!" And I was, "Yes, isn't it? Isn't it?" So we began to watch a series, and yes, she's not that like into Star Wars or anything, but she's always saying
Not
me,
a nerd.
"Well, what do you
Yeah,
know
I've seen
about?"
your wife. She's just cool to be a nerd, man. It's just that
Yeah, yeah, but she's like always saying, "Well, what do you know about the third season? Is it
yeah.
coming up or not?" Yes, yes. Let me check. So yes, we here we are very, very, Philip Pullmanish family here. So yeah.
Well, that's awesome. Jose, as always, it is such an extreme pleasure talking with you. We have unpacked and learned a lot here, so people have a lot of things to look up. I will have links down below for all of it. But again, the thing I keep coming back to and saying is there is a rich, vibrant, beautiful history of Mexican and Latin dark wave that is out there, that is waiting for you. You just have to do the slightest Google search to find it. I will link some of these bands below. Also, make sure to check out Jose's band Hueco. That is absolutely amazing. And I look forward to doing more of these discussions and talks with Jose so that we can unpack more of some of these bands that really need to find an American audience and be brought to the light.
Well, thank you very much, Ken, again for the space, for the the wonderful community and your wonderful team, Katie and Colin, always like bringing it up, and making it happen. I mean, it's been a pleasure being here. It's been a pleasure talking with you, and as well, getting to know so much new bands or new material or things that are new for us, thanks to you. Like
I was just talking with on an interview with Jason Corbett from Actors, and was saying how excited that they're trying to make it happen to get over there and play in Mexico City. And I really, as things start to open up, look forward to. I saw Ash Code is going to be over there playing, so I don't know. We need to figure this out, Jose. We need to get me over there when there's something big happening and come for a visit so you can show me the world of the Mexico City dark scene through your eyes.
Yes, I will, and I mean, it will be my pleasure to do so. Yeah. But yes, thank you very much, Ken, Katie, again for everything, for the opportunity, and thank you for to the community of Sounds and Shadows and the rest of the people who are going to be watching this. Thank you for listening and for watching.
All right, everybody out there, keep it dark, yeah.
precioso.
¿Sí?
Sí.
Yo me desvanecí entre las flores.